I have never sent anything to a label before, so some guidelines, tips and tricks would be helpful. They are allowed to reopen in October only. That's provoking a big new wave of rave and illegal parties, often respecting and sometimes not the health rules. I have like 2 millisecond phasing issue between left and right. Clue, my 4 cables LR in, LR out are all different. There was a recent debate on the EDM Twitter about that quote from the Spotify CEO, like saying how and when artists should release stuff. What are your thoughts on Apple moving over to ARM-based chips and maybe Apple laptops getting cheaper? What is your favourite track on your album and why? Give me 3, 4, 5, 6 beers. So, I have some issues with a lot of things here. Hey guys, welcome to the Kane audio vlog. It is Friday. It's time for another Ask Me Anything. Usual rules apply. Comment anything you want below this video and I'll get back to you in next week's video. Before I look at last week's video, is there any house admin? There definitely is. Let me think, what was it? So first of all, Spotify playlist has been updated again. I've done it 2 weeks in a row now, which is like a miracle for me to remember that. Yeah, I'm particularly pleased with this week's. It's sounding good. So if you don't already follow the Spotify playlist, then it is called 5302 Electronica. There'll be a link below this video. There always is. I think it's in the 5302 stuff link. Right on cue. Next door's dog is making an appearance. What else is there? Oh, I mentioned last week that my album on the release of last week's video should have been available for pre-order through iTunes with what they call an instant gratification track. It's so if you pre-order the album, you get 1 track straight away. That was supposed to be available last week. It was not. I think it has gone up for pre-order on iTunes, but it's not doing the instant track. So I've spoken to distributors and it's getting sorted. It'll be done when it's done. Bit annoying, but these things happen. This is kind of the stuff that where for anyone who's followed well more than one of these videos, you'll know my album is coming out. You'll know that I'm launching a record label called 5302. And you'll know that I've been saying all along, you know, I'm putting my money where my mouth is by making the first release of the album, the first release of the record label to be my album. Yeah, so that's kind of one of the reasons why, and that's probably exactly what I mean really when I say I'm putting my money where my mouth is. You know, it's any kind of teething problems that this label may have, for example, pre-order issues. They only affect me, so it is what it is. Yeah, so that's that. What else have I got? I think that is it for now. Yeah, I think that's it for house admin. Yeah, so let's have a look at last week's video and see where we're at. Let me get comfortable. Right, starting at the top, Gold Toast. Hi Dom, long time since I commented anything, usually just watching, but got the impression that you might feel like you might feel like you struggle a bit with the AMAs, wanting more viewers and questions. Yeah, I kind of do and I don't. Could be wrong, but either way, I think you should play the YouTube game a bit more anyways. I think your title is hard to click on, seeing Ask Me Anything 116 isn't interesting and it doesn't tell you anything. You're 100% right, I think. I think simply having another title and possibly thumbnail would help increase the viewers. For example, this week's video could have been titled When to Give Up on Your Track, Ask Me Anything 116. Or something along those lines. Pick the most interesting or grabbing question and put it in the title. Yeah, this is something I've actually thought about. and it's something that for 116 episodes I've been going, I should really do that. Thumbnails, I get what you're saying, and I agree. They should be more grabby, but equally, I think one of the things I chose early on in setting up this channel, much like the record label, much like my work as an artist, I am kind of the opposite of clickbait, and I kind of feel like if you want this product, it's here. If you don't, you don't. So the thumbnail thing, while I'm aware that they probably account for more clicks than anything else, I feel like it's too much work to lose quality, if that makes sense. So I'm very careful with the thumbnails in that I don't do art-based stuff. I'm terrible at visual stuff, and I freely admit that. So for me to do thumbnails, I don't even, like, I know that like some of the YouTubers I follow, for example, like the car guys or whatever, they'll have a photo of them in front of each car, and they'll do that sort of shocked face or something stupid, did I crash my car ? And then you click on the video and you're like, no, I didn't crash my car, but here's the rest of my video. I'm kind of really careful that I don't want to go down that road, basically, because I know it'll get me more views, and I get it, but that's just not me. I don't, I'm not, I don't want to achieve things through immoral processes, I guess. I think you're probably right in what I should do is probably pick the most intriguing question title and stick that in the beginning of the title of the video. So you never know, you might be watching one that I've done that on already, and in which case all of this is suddenly irrelevant. Now, hopefully, if you're not tired of reading yet, here is my questions. I feel like my latest track is good enough to be sent out to labels. Now, the problem is I have never sent anything to a label before, so some guidelines, tips and tricks would be helpful. What information should be included? So, I think as a producer and as a label, I think it's important to be short and sweet. And by short and sweet, I mean literally 3 sentences, maybe 4 at the most, because a lot of record labels out there get huge amounts of promos and demos, and they don't want to be reading an essay with each one. So keep it really simple. Introduce yourself as in your name, where you're from, roughly, what country, city, whatever. How long you've been doing this. So, if you've only been producing for 6 months, say that. If you've been producing for 20 years, say that. I don't think it really has much impact. Like, I don't think anyone's ever going to go, oh, I'll sign this guy because he's been producing for this length of time, or I won't sign this person because they've not been producing long enough. It's not really about that. It's more about giving the A&R person just a bit of an idea of who you are. And I think, if they hear this immaculately produced track and you say you've only been producing for 6 months, they'll go, wow. I think that's kind of worth doing. But so name, how long you've been doing it. Look, I mean, it's tricky for me to answer fully because every label is different. Every person wants different information. But I always feel like you need to try and have some sort of conversation with them as well. I would usually say don't describe your music. Just don't bother, If it's house music, it's house music. You're submitting to a house label. If it's a techno track and you're submitting to a techno label, then they don't need to hear you tell them, what you envisaged when you wrote it, because it's kind of irrelevant. They either like it or they don't, and so that's why I say keep it short and sweet. Yeah, I guess, when I say about starting a conversation, if they haven't already stipulated on their website, and double check on their website, double check on their social media or anything like that, wherever you get their email address from or their contact details, ask them if they prefer a download or if they prefer a streamable one. Do they want SoundCloud private links, or do they want a Dropbox download, or what? One thing I will say is never ever ever send your MP3 as an attachment. Never do that, because most A&R people that I know check their emails on their phone and travel the world a lot, and the last thing you want to do is get off the aeroplane in Moscow and have to instantly download a 15 megabyte MP3 onto your phone just to be able to check your emails, because that just costs you a fortune. So bear in mind most people have email on their phone these days, so I think that's quite important. What else? I guess something you want to try and get across is I guess bringing it back to where I said how long you've been producing or whatever. I guess the reason for that is because they want to know where you're at. So if you've only been producing for 6 months, you don't have any track record, you don't have any previous sales, you don't have any previous charting, and that's not a bad thing necessarily. It just means that they might be looking for someone new to build all of that with, or they might be looking for someone who's already got chart experience or whatever. So this is what I mean is every label is looking for something different, and for some labels these things are really important, and for some labels they're not so important. But yeah, as an A&R manager myself, I don't find those things necessarily important. I think that we are all constantly growing, and that's something that's going to happen either way. But if you've been producing for 10 years professionally, then I'd like to know, well, what have you done in that 10 years? And I don't need your whole CV, but give me a couple of highlights. Are you also a DJ? Are you touring all the time? Are you the kind of artist that really puts energy into your career, and is that something I want to work with at this point in time? Or are you the kind of person that doesn't want to ever gig? You don't want to DJ, you just want to make music and release it. I guess these things can be important, and they're certainly a factor that come into play. Certainly for a label like mine with 5302, because the plan of the label is to work with the artists over a long-term period. I'm not looking for one-hit wonders, and I think that's important for me to stipulate for anyone that's looking to send me demos. The artists on the label, I want to have repeat releases with on a regular basis. So I think that's important as well. There we go. I think hopefully that should help. Other than that, best of luck. Fanfan87, salut Dom. No keyword detected. No, you're right, I didn't. Last week, much like this week, the heat has been pretty exhausting. Last week I was sweating profusely. This week the weather is just starting to turn a bit cooler now, but yesterday, for example, I had doors, windows, everything open. I had a fan on this desk blowing in my face, and it was still 36 degrees. It was ridiculously hot. There was just no air movement whatsoever. So that's probably why you didn't get a keyword last week. I think I was just completely worn out and just wanted to end it all. So yeah, there we go. My questions this week. I don't know the UK case, but in France, nightclubs and stadiums are the almost only economic sector that is still closed. Yeah, it's the same in the UK pretty much. Oh, and leisure centres, weirdly. They are allowed to reopen in October only. That's provoking a big new wave of rave and illegal parties, often respecting and sometimes not the health rules, masks, physical distance, etc. Because the CEOs of clubs can't open and receive very few help from the government, so artists can no longer get most of their incomes and are forced to play in half-controlled illegal places. So, if it would happen in the UK, what would be your thoughts? So, look, at the end of the day, anything that spreads a virus that is capable of creating, becoming, maintaining, sustaining a pandemic is not good. Anything that does that. So I can't say I would ever condone putting on illegal raves and whatever during a pandemic. I think it's plain stupid, to be honest. Even if you're adhering to social distancing, and look, let's be real here. Come on, are you really social distancing in an illegal rave? You're not really, are you? Let's be honest here. If I think most viewers of this channel will probably agree that I'm a fairly sensible person generally. I'm assuming you can hear that, but that's a very low flying aeroplane. Yeah, I like to think of myself as a sensible person, but give me 3, 4, 5, 6 beers and 150 million decibel sound system in a dark wooded area, and maybe I'm not the most sensible person in the world. Look, and I think this is one of the things is, so I'm in Greater Manchester, where we're currently experiencing, it's not a second wave, but an upward trend in the virus spreading again. And so we're in I'm not going to call it a second lockdown, because it's not a second lockdown. It's whatever the capitalist version is of that, where basically we can't do anything that's free, but we're allowed to do stuff where it involves us spending money. So, for example, we can go to pubs and restaurants, but we're not allowed to have a friend over in our garden. So that makes no sense whatsoever. But again, let's be really honest here. This upward trend just happens to be coming, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks after all the pubs and restaurants opened. Is that a coincidence? Probably not. So I think, putting on raves, okay, it's maybe not as bad as opening all the pubs and restaurants. But I don't know. I struggle to agree with it. So yeah, I don't condone it at all, because I think, a pandemic is a pandemic, and I know that some people want to try and make light of it, but at the end of the day, when we don't fully understand how coronavirus works properly yet, and how it spreads and how it impacts long-term effects, and as more research comes out, it's splitting more and more opinions, and it's already become a political thing, it seems. I think for us to go partying in the middle of it all, do you want to be 10 years down the line looking back at those raves going, why did we do that? That wasn't clever. Can we not just wait a bit until it's a bit safer and a bit better? And I don't know. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I think it's not good, and like I say, once people have had a few drinks, they're not social distancing. I mean, look, I've been out shopping. I've done my food shopping during this pandemic, and there are people that are just absolute idiots everywhere, that are just coughing and sneezing and reaching over your shoulder and pushing things out the way and touching everything in the shop, and and they're sober. So I think we need to accept our own accountabilities and responsibilities, really. I recently received an Art VLA2. I tried it, but in a mastering context. Okay. I have like 2 millisecond phasing issue between left and right. Clue, my 4 cables, LR in, LR out, are all different length and different brand. Is it enough to create a delay of 2 milliseconds at the end? Oh, I mean, if they were drastically different, I suppose you could, because they'll have different resistances. Are we talking all 4 cables are different? Because you really want to be having a matched pair in and a matched pair out. It doesn't matter if your ins are different to your outs, but you want a matched pair in and a matched pair out. I'm not one of these people that says, oh, you need the best gold quality cable and you need to spend 10 grand on this bit of wire. At the end of the day, a bit of wire is a bit of wire, but different materials, different densities, different lengths, all of these things will alter the resistance. So when you're dealing with analog signals like that, then you need to be careful. However, would that cause 2 milliseconds of phasing? I don't know is the honest answer. I think in theory it probably could, but equally it's fairly unlikely. But it would definitely be the first thing I would try, because that's what engineering is all about. It's about writing stuff out of the equation to then go, right, it's not that, let's try this. Right, it's not that, let's try this, and just narrowing it down. So yeah, sort the cable issue out first, and then see what happens. If by the time this video goes out, let me know how that goes. There was a recent debate on the EDM Twitter about that quote from the Spotify CEO, like saying how and when artists should release stuff. Yeah, I heard about that. For anyone that didn't see it, I've not paid much attention, and I have a feeling I'm about to explain why in a bit. But so to fill everyone in from what I know, and this is all I know, is that the CEO basically said if you want a career in music these days, you need to be releasing really frequently through Spotify to be making up the numbers, and that basically that's the way things will be in the future. I'm not sure I agree with that, because at the end of the day, if you wanted to be a fantastic fine art painter, doing one a day isn't going to make you an incredible fine art painter. So I think, I don't know. I just think that's not how it works, and also I don't think that's how that shouldn't impact Spotify or their revenue as well. So I feel like maybe he's just not quite fully understood what he was saying, or maybe what he was saying and what he was meaning were two different things. I don't know. I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt here, but I haven't seen the video, assuming it was on video. I don't know, but I haven't seen whatever he actually said word for word, so I don't want to comment too much on that. Anyway, creating a big reaction wave complaining about the new model of the industry, about artists streaming money versus majors and streaming platforms streaming money, making Spotify a big multinational company and artists even more poor when you compare the money earned by a play versus a purchase. So those artists, I think about TB and Tiss mostly, are pushing Bandcamp to react and offer a solution to convince more and more people to use the economic model, where the artist has much more control on his own production and income. What's your opinion? So, I have some issues with a lot of things here. First of all, I think there are lots and lots of people. So I've not really seen the Spotify CEO words, but I have seen a lot of people's reactions, and I feel like a lot of people don't fully understand their own industry, and that to me is probably the scariest part of all of this. Is people I know who are in the industry don't seem to understand their own industry, and I think that's quite scary. So let's talk about the fact that, first of all, people seem to be comparing Spotify plays to radio plays. Well, one Spotify play is equivalent to one person listening. Therefore, it's equivalent to a radio station playing your music to one listener. It's not comparable. The other thing to mention is that if you're going to compare it to radio plays, then you need to understand that radio royalties have shrunk dramatically, and radio in general is full of adverts and all sorts of stuff, and there's no repeat listens unless you get playlisted on radio. Then there's no repetitions, and there's a huge amount of just they're worlds apart. Basically, you can't compare them. Simple as that. And I think that's hugely important, because yes, you might earn much more having your track played on radio, but also the other thing, and this is hugely important, I've had tracks played on lots of radio stations where it hasn't gone on the cue sheet, meaning it hasn't been submitted for royalties, meaning I didn't get a penny for that. So what good is that for me? That's paying less than Spotify. So that's one thing to consider. The other thing to consider, and this is where I stand up for Spotify, but also accept a bit of flexibility. Okay, first of all, let's all agree the Spotify payment is definitely lower than it should be. The 0.00 whatever pence per play is definitely lower than it should be, because all the other streaming services, whether it be Apple Music or whatever, when you factor in pence per play, they pay higher. To my understanding, that's pretty much across the board. However, I will say this, and I've said this before, and I'll say it many more times to come. I have earned more actual money from Spotify than I have from all of the download stores and all of the other streaming services, every other musical outlet put together in, let's say, the last 12 months or the last 24 months or whatever. I've earned more from Spotify in real hard cash in my bank account than I have from any other shop, download store, streaming service, whatever, or all of them put together. That comes from things like Spotify editorial playlisting, the fact that, I've had multiple millions of plays on some tracks. So, I'm very fortunate that that's the case, but that's also realistic for pretty much anyone. And I mean, Spotify have opened up their submission process to anyone as well. So I think that's achievable. It's not unrealistic to have that. It's certainly more achievable for any of you people watching these videos to have that happen than to be A-listed on BBC Radio 1, which is, really what people are trying to compare it to, and that's just not comparable. So I think that's an important thing to remember. Now, moving on to the Bandcamp thing, I'm a big fan of Bandcamp as a business model. I think it works, it's good, great, whatever. But let's not forget that Bandcamp aren't exactly altruistic in this. They're still taking a cut themselves. They're no different. Let's be honest, they're no different to Beatport, for example. The only difference is that basically, as a producer, you can upload your music directly to Bandcamp rather than through a label and distributor. So they're kind of cutting out the middleman. That's great. But again, bringing it back to cold hard cash and real world figures, if I put out a track on Bandcamp today and sold it for whatever the average Beatport price is, let's say 99 pence, how many am I really going to sell? 100, 200, that's fine. That's great. But realistically, for most producers below my level, how many are they going to sell, and how are they going to sell them? How are people going to find you on Bandcamp? And I think that's where it becomes tricky. I'm just going to hit reset on the camera before it cuts me off. So I think that's where it becomes tricky is how do you publicize the release, and how do you get that big exposure and whatever? And this is really what we're all after. Is it's fine to ride the crest of any given wave. So if, for example, your track gets playlisted on Spotify in an editorial, you're getting thrown out to potentially millions of listeners. If you get playlisted on the radio, you're getting put in front of potentially millions of listeners. Although that's arguable these days, as most radio stations, certainly in the UK, have a few thousand listeners, not millions anymore. But when it comes to Bandcamp, how is it? Is it getting a front page feature? Is there, like, if you release a track on Beatport, there's a submission process for you to have that track featured on the front page, or to get charted by DJs or whatever. There's a whole host of things that can just really ramp up that exposure on Bandcamp. And I could be wrong here, maybe there is like a front page feature type thing, but even if there is, I don't know if there is by genre or anything like that. So I know like SoundCloud used to do a front page feature, and an artist I knew had a front page feature on SoundCloud, and I think that track had something like 200,000 plays, huge numbers of plays. Great. How many sales? None. That didn't translate to anything. So 200,000 people heard the track. Great. But nobody bought it. And that's kind of the point with Bandcamp, is you can do as many features as you want, but it's not necessarily where people choose to go shopping and spending money on new artists. I know I sound like I'm shitting on Bandcamp, and I'm really not, because I like the business model and I think it works, but I do think that there's a step missing, and this is where I've talked about in videos how important a record label can be. That people have asked, how important is a record label in this day and age? Well, they're only as important as they make themselves, and a record label could just sign a track, put it out, job done, end of. But there's a whole load of other work that needs to go into the system as well. And I think, again, to compare any of these streaming services like Spotify to something like Bandcamp, again, they're not really comparable, because Spotify has millions upon millions of users, and there are millions of playlists being curated and created every day, and the opportunity for exposure is there. Yes, the pay per play is low, and lower than it should be, but it's not and shouldn't be comparable to whether it be radio or Bandcamp or whatever. So Bandcamp is great if you already have a huge following. If I was Kanye West, I'd probably only sell my stuff through Bandcamp, because I get all the money, or most of it. Why not? Because you've got huge amounts of followers, and that's great. But for other people, and people like myself who are musicians who do fine, but I don't have millions of followers. Look at the view count of this video. There's not millions of followers. I don't have a huge clout in that world, so across social media and whatever. So for me to just chuck a track out on Bandcamp is not going to earn me anywhere near as much as it would on Spotify when it comes to actual cold hard cash in the bank. So yeah, that is my massive long rant about Spotify. I think, by all means, avoid Spotify if you want, but I don't think that helps. I don't think it changes anything. and it sure as hell isn't going to make Spotify change anything, because I'll be honest, I've never heard of TB or TIS or THIS, so I don't know who they are, and therefore I'm never going to see their Bandcamp page, because how would I hear about it? And I think that's probably a good example. I might have heard some of their music. I might have even heard it on Spotify, because I listen to a lot of playlists on Spotify, as do millions and millions of other people around the world. And that's the point I'm trying to make, is that their tracks could be on Spotify playlists that they've never heard of and that they would have never submitted to, because the public make their own playlists. There isn't that opportunity in Bandcamp that I'm aware of. So if they're only pushing their stuff on Bandcamp or Beatport or whatever, I have never heard of them and probably never will hear of them again after this video, because I don't use Bandcamp as a consumer. So there we go. I can see Andrew Hollis has replied. Regarding the streaming debate, a well-known techno IDM artist producer provided a notion that streaming should be seen in the same way as radio royalty payments. I've never known artists ask a radio station to stop playing their music as the payment is too low. I do feel for them, but streaming platforms are here to stay, so what can you do? I would like to think that streaming has helped cut down the amount of people who used to get their music via torrents. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest take-homes from streaming services as a whole, which I don't know if that is what people are saying about Spotify, but yeah, as far as I'm concerned, Spotify has really drastically cut down on a lot of piracy, because why bother pirating MP3 files and going through all that faff when you could have a free Spotify account with the odd advert, or just pay whatever the fee is and have everything at your fingertips and using up no hard drive space. To me, it's a no-brainer. So there we go. Not Your Human. Hi Dom, what are your thoughts on Apple moving over to ARM-based chips and maybe Apple laptops getting cheaper? Have a great weekend. You too. I don't really have any thoughts on it. The only thing I will say is I don't think this is as big or complicated as when they moved to Intel, but we'll see what happens, I guess. As for them being cheaper, I can't remember who it was, but someone on Twitter, it might have been Jacku, I think, but someone mentioned about them becoming cheaper, and I sort of basically said, well, I'm not holding my breath. Let's see if they really are cheaper, because the word cheaper and the word Apple don't generally go in the same sentence very often. So yeah, they might end up making lower budget laptops or something, but are you getting more bang for buck with a lower price? I don't know. We're yet to see. It'll be interesting to see how it happens though. Yeah, I do think that this time, I know with Intel it was a bit of a nightmare, and I know that as a producer, everything, it was just a huge overhaul of everything that, all the software had to then suddenly be Intel compatible, let alone your hardware, and that was a bit of a nightmare. But I feel like Apple own the ARM side of stuff, so they're going internal. So I'm running on the assumption that everything that currently works correctly will continue to work correctly, because they're giving themselves a couple of years run into it. So I feel like it won't affect us too much. I might regret saying that, but there we go. And finally, Deadly Custard. In my recent experience, it became much easier to finish tracks when I had a purpose for writing them. Also, I certainly need to be in the mood to work on music as well. If I'm not feeling it after half an hour, off Ableton goes. Saving optional. The luxury of the amateur. I'm guessing none of that is a question, so I know. What is your favourite track on your album and why? So in terms of finishing a track, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, generally for me, I think if I'm not feeling it after half an hour, I'd probably just go, forget it, and try something else, or or just move to something different. And yeah, I do find it's much easier to finish a track when you have a purpose for them. And sometimes you can make up what that purpose is. But I've always enjoyed, I know a lot of people don't like this, but I've always enjoyed writing to a brief. So if an ad spec comes through and, a company wants a 30-second track to represent whatever mood or whatever, I quite enjoy those as a challenge. I think they can be quite good fun, and you kind of know where you're going then, so it makes more sense. Sometimes it's harder when you've just got that blank canvas. As for what is my favourite track on the album, do you know what? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I think probably the last one, Frozen Mist. Yeah, I think that's probably my favourite. Just because musically it makes me happy. And musically, my brain writes additional notes and melodies that go on top. And every time I tried writing those additional notes and melodies, they kind of didn't work, but I want them to be there. And so it leaves me with that sort of wanting more type thing, which I think is a good thing. Yeah, I'm saying that. Track 10. So there we go, my friends. That is it for this week. So if you've made it this far in, it's actually been quite long this week, so if you've made it this far in, please comment the word Martin, because Aston Martin DBX full review is in front of me here. Why this SUV will be a game changer. Well, there we go. I can't imagine it's a game changer in Aston Martin, but anyway, comment the word Martin and I'll give you a high five in next week's video. Other than that, I hope you all have a good weekend. I'm off to get some fresh air now because I can barely breathe. See you this time next week. Cheers.